Hello to all my American patriots. My name is Kirsten, and I started Patriot for Truth to hold a platform where anybody can come on the show, talk about any injustice, holding the government accountable, any stories that you want to tell, whether it's from rescuing animals to being a veteran to prison reform. I mean, there are no limits here. And I just want to give everybody a platform. Don't judge before you hear someone's story. We all know what it's like to be judged. So, my very first guest on this show is one of my best friends. This woman is phenomenal. She is not only artistic, she survived a plane crash. She was a January 6th defendant and she has gone through hell, but I'm so excited to bring her on this show so she can tell you her story. We're going to cover a lot of things today. So without further ado, let me bring her in. Hello.
Look at you with all your stuff.
Yeah, how many podcasts have I been on? And everyone says, you got to start your own.
Got
So,
your palm tree and you're looking good. Uh-huh.
we're going to wing it here.
Okay. Wing
All
it
right.
away.
So, not only are you a breast cancer survivor, you were a January 6er, and you survived a plane crash at 18 months old.
That's correct.
So, we have a lot to cover here. So, if you want to walk the people through a little bit of your experience, obviously at 18 months old, you didn't remember it at the time,
Mm-mm.
but it led you down a path of discovering what happened. I know it led you down a path of addiction at one point. So I guess we can start there.
Okay. Well, 1958, we'll go way back in the Wayback Machine. August 15th, 1958. I was traveling back from Ohio to Nantucket, Massachusetts with my mother, and we were leaving LaGuardia around 11 o'clock at night. We actually, my mother wasn't sure she was going to fly or take a bus, and she ended up getting on the plane standby. So we were standby passengers on the plane. We were the last ones to get loaded on to fly to Nantucket. Because of that, we weren't on the manifest for the passenger list. So we got on the plane, and there was a lot of ground fog on Nantucket that rolls in off the ocean. It gets really thick, but that fog was thick on the ground level, but you could see through the fog. You could see the stars and the moon and whatnot in breaks of the fog. And when the plane came into Nantucket, they were coming in. They weren't on instruments. The pilot was just doing his thing. He'd flown that route many times before, and he ended up. They missed the runway. They hit the dirt like 600 feet. I think it was 600 or 800 feet from the end of the runway. The plane cartwheeled and it broke up on impact, and then it caught fire. And there were 34 on board, and of those 34, there were 10 that survived. I was one of them. My mother died on the plane. She was burned to death. Her sat in her seat. But the one thing before she died that she did was she screamed to everybody, "Save my baby, save my baby." So she was still alive after impact. And I just think it's very heroic and very strong of her to, put her baby before herself. That's what mothers do.
So I was actually reading a guy named John was one of the survivors, and he actually told reporters that your mom's last words was "take the baby."
Yeah.
And if you didn't believe in God, the fact that when I show these pictures of what this plane looked like, that you had literally a scratch on your chin, 18 months old. So let's show the audience some of these pictures.
Yeah,
I
it
mean,
was a mess. And I do wanna say to the audience, think about 9/11 and think about the plane crash that occurred in Pennsylvania. You're looking at what it looks like when there's devastation from a plane crash.
I mean,
I see that on 9/11.
it's it's pretty incredible.
Mhm.
So take us through kind of how you were affected. I know your parents were going through a divorce and your grandparents raised you,
Right,
and then
so
how it led up to, not being able to process it later in life, writing this book.
yeah. So after the crash, I was taken in by my mother's parents, both on Nantucket, and they raised me. There was a lot of family conflict because they were going through a divorce at the time, my mother and my father. So my grandparents fought for custody of me and were able to get it. But the one thing that I wrote about in my book was that they were both alcoholics prior to the crash, and then after the crash, it just escalated. So my life growing up wasn't Leave It to Beaver. We'll say that. I was a street kid. He left home early on, 18 years old. And the way I dealt with everything, because it was very confusing to me, even when in grade school, because at first I didn't know that my grandmother wasn't my mother. Like they didn't tell me about all of that until I got into first grade and someone whispered to me, that's not your mother, that's your grandmother. And I just got very confused, and through my teenage years, I just got out of control trying to numb everything I was dealing with, and I numbed it out with drugs, with alcohol, and I did it for many years, till I was around 30, and then I put it all down, and I've been sober since then, and, but that wasn't the only chaos in my life. So after I got married and had a daughter, and after she was born, well, when she was actually after she had was about the time she was going to college, yeah, in 2008. Here's the interesting thing. I wrote the book about the crash in 2008. And if you study energetic medicine, the left hand side of the body, you process everything that emotionally has to do with the mother, the other side of the body with the father. And right after I wrote the book, I got diagnosed with breast cancer in my left breast, mother's side of the body. And I think I was just processing all that emotion in writing the book. So I went through breast cancer. I had a mastectomy and chemotherapy and survived that. I'm just too mean to die. I used to tell
Anyway, not only did you survive one of the deadliest plane crashes in Nantucket history, right? You were called the Miracle Baby.
Yep.
And then you found yourself into a whole nother storm, which happens to be one of the things in national American history that is very much talked about as a very big conflict. So, and you've also tell us about I know you've been to Peru, you're very spiritual, and you believe in, holistic medicine. So tell us about, I know you had your own store.
Right. And that was after I left corporate America. And I ended up I had gotten a nice severance package and a retirement package, and I invested it in my dream, which was a small holistic healing store. I sold Native American arts and crafts and just healing herbal solutions. And it was great. I loved it. And then came January 6th, and that kind of took care of that little escapade in my life. So, yeah, this is my store, and you can see the herbs all behind. These are some of the artwork that I sold. They're called kachinas, and they were carved by the Hopi Native Americans out in Arizona. I have one particular man that I really bought a lot of his carvings from. His name's Dominic, and he's an amazing artist. And I actually traveled to the reservation visited with him. These pieces that they carve out of one piece of wood. It's cottonwood, and so that whole carving is done by hand from one piece of wood, and if you look at the intricacies, it's just incredible. So, yeah, my store was doing well. I even made it through COVID, because I was selling elderberry syrup and I was shipping it all over the country, so I was doing very well with that, and then came January 6th.
Well, not only did you, have holistic stuff, but you're also very, creative
Yep, that's some
in,
of
uh
my beadwork. Yeah,
some of the intricate beadwork that you've done.
yep,
So, let's fast forward to 6.
yeah. The one thing I do wanna say is as you can probably tell, God's been present in my life for a very long time, and I really think that he was preparing me as I went through life. And I believe that when I went to January 6th, I didn't know what exactly drove me to go there, but I did have this feeling like that I had to be there. I was upset about the election. I was upset about COVID. I was upset about what was going on in our school systems, and I wanted to see Trump's speech. So I went. And I think that God wanted me there as a witness, and that's what I was a witness. I didn't hurt anybody or harm anything. I pretty much walked through a building. I said things. I said, "This is our house, USA," things they don't like to hear in DC.
Well, so why did you decide to go to January 6th, besides feeling some type of God presence telling you to go? I know that you were speaking at going to school board meetings.
Yeah, I wanted to redress my grievances. I had always known that when you have an issue, like if you have an issue in your town and it's with, the board of selectmen or the school board, you bring it to the board. You tell them what your concerns are. I didn't think the Capitol was any different. I thought this is our building that we pay for. We had a right to sit in on a hearing and, give our voices. That's what I wanted to do.
And tell the audience, you didn't have a criminal history.
No criminal history.
And you're how old?
I'll be 70 in December.
So
I was
imagine
I
the
was
swing
60.
of the federal government at,
Yeah,
in your 60s is wild.
yeah, and they came after me on, January 13th. That was the first time the FBI visited, and they left a card in my door, so I called the number on the card, and they asked me a bunch of questions. "Why did you go? How did you go? What were you thinking? Was it mob mentality?" They put all these thoughts and words out there, and if you agree, then you've said those things. Basically, they write them all up in your reports that go to the court and what they testify to. But anyway, so he asked me all kinds of questions, and then obviously he did his investigation. He looked at all the videos, and he looked at what he had. And in April of that year, the Division of, Child and Family Services, or Child Trafficking, Division of Child Trafficking, called him and said, "Are we gonna open a case on her?" And he said, "No, we're not opening a case." So he opened the investigation and he closed it in April of the same year, but he didn't tell me that. So time goes on, and I have a trip that I'm doing to Arizona to pick up some stuff for my shop that I still had. So I call him and I say, "Listen, I'm hearing that people are having difficulty flying on planes because they're getting the 4 quad S's, and am I going to have problems at the airport?" And he said, "No, your case is on the back burner. Go ahead, do what you got to do." Off I went. No problem. I come back, and in the fall of that year, the parents were going to school board meetings because of concerns with critical race theory and the masking things that they were doing with the kids. So one of my friends called me and said, Cindy, we could use you at the school board to speak up. Of course, I go. And while I'm there, Channel 9, which is our local news station, runs a clip of me speaking to the school board about CRT and masking. And Garland, Attorney General, had just written his letter that said that parents attending school board meetings were domestic terrorists. So a month later, knock, 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 FBI, second visit. I think it was that. I don't know for a fact. I've tried to FOIA things to get that information, and they just stall with their responses. You don't get anything from them. So I haven't proved it to myself yet, but I really think that, there are no coincidences. I've found that in life, and the timing and the factors just say to me that that was why the second visit. Plus, there was a confidential human source, which was a sedition hunter that had identified me and put in information on me as well. So the second investigation starts in early 2023. So I'm getting surveilled by the FBI. They're showing up outside my house. One time they lit up my apartment here. They go in the parking lot and I wake up at 2 in the morning and the whole apartment's lit up because they've got their high beams shining in. And, they just were always out in that parking lot for hours looking at my apartment. And I was like, what did they and these were local PD, but the FBI hires these people as, they call them TFOs, technical field operations or whatever. So they kind of give them the FBI. They can do what an FBI agent does, but they're still a police officer. So anyway, I'm being surveilled and all, and in July of 2023, the FBI agent that first contacted me calls me up on the phone. I had just done a podcast and with Lisa Schermerhorn. It hadn't broadcast yet, so it was taped like this. Hadn't gone out on the airwaves yet, but they obviously had heard the podcast and I was talking about J6. And he said, you need to turn yourself in Concord, New Hampshire. And I said, well, I'm working. Can I do it, after I get out of work? He goes, oh, no, you got to be there first thing in the morning. So down to Concord I go, first thing in the morning. They arraign me. They do all the things they do, the DNA swab, fingerprinting, blah, blah, blah. Put me in a cell, 8 o'clock in the morning in pink shackles. I sit there till 4 in the afternoon. I'm not able to see a judge until the end of the day. I go to the judge, and it was like they knew how everything was going to play out, Kirsten. They had the public defender was on board, ready to go. And, they just knew that I was going to go home that day. They even told me, you're going home. We're not going to keep you. And I have this public defender now. And it was like so confusing to me because I've never ever experienced that in my life. So the public defender starts doing the case with me, and I have an appointment to go meet with him in his office. And the first time I go in there, all of a sudden he brings in a second public defender. Now I've got 4 charges, which are misdemeanors. And I'm thinking, 2 public defenders for 4 misdemeanor charges? So we start looking into these public defenders. And the initial one that I had, is suspended in New Hampshire. And the reason the second one was there was because he couldn't do any motions or responses because he wasn't supposed to be practicing. They never disclosed that. So I was pushing back and forth with them, and it was contentious, to say the least. And finally, a few months down the road, I think it was like probably late October, they withdraw. They say, we've had enough. We're withdrawing from the case. We can't deal with you. So anyway, they withdraw. I go to a Marjorie Taylor Greene event. I meet her. She says to me, "I hope you have good representation because you're gonna need it. They're not screwing around in DC." And I said, "Well, there's a little bit to that story. I don't have anybody right now." So she says, "Give your information to my staffer," which I did. I didn't think I was gonna hear anything at all, Kirsten. Um, I said to her, I said, "Okay, here's my information." I go home. I didn't think I'd hear anything. And all of a sudden, a couple days later, I get this call. "My name is Jonathan Gross. I'm calling at the request of Marjorie Taylor Greene, and I want to represent you." And I'm like, wow. And it was a nominal fee, which if you looked at all the cases, Kirsten, it wasn't cheap, thousands of dollars. I had interviewed with one attorney out of Massachusetts. He wanted to start at 15 and it would probably go up to 30,000 by the time I was done if we go through trial. So when I had my first call with Jonathan, he said to me, he goes, "I'm going to be honest with you. You're not gonna win in DC. You just they hate you. They hate everything about you. They've just been rolling these cases through. They've got like a 99% conviction rate." And he goes, "So we can fight this, and we're gonna fight this, and we'll make them bleed on the way down." I was like, "Okay, I like that. Make them bleed on the way down." So he was hired
Well, so think about it. So, how we actually met was
right
I
around that
your
time.
comparator. So they showed you my case because I had the same charges and I was from New Hampshire. And, you ended up looking me up somehow and getting my email. And by the grace of God, I found this random email that wasn't in my spam folder. And we pretty much immediately met up. We were doing flag waves, we were doing car parades, we were doing everything.
Great time together, and it was like instant connection, sisters from another mother, and, I couldn't have asked for a better friend during a really difficult time, and Kirsten, you were there through and through, and we got through a lot of shit together, didn't we?
Yeah. I mean, you saw me off to prison,
Yeah.
because my case was before yours. I also chose to take it to trial. Me and you both, we refused to
One of
put
the only 2 misdemeanor females that went through a full trial, and we're both from New Hampshire. Live free or die, baby.
Yep. And they told us, like, you're gonna go to prison. And, we both kind of stood on the attitude of that we're going to prison on principle because I'm not bowing.
Right.
So what do you think is harder? Facing the public criticism or navigating the legal system?
That's a tough question. The legal system, I just find it incredibly frustrating. I don't know what they're doing anymore in DC. Well, it's not even just DC, Kirsten, it's everywhere. It's local, state courts. Our judicial system is rot from the inside out, and it really needs to be leveled. And, we've been hearing that justice is coming and things are going to change. But you know what? I'm still seeing the FBI go after people, the DOJ go after people. And this is Trump's administration. This isn't Biden. This is Trump's administration. And people are still being persecuted.
So, something that I want to talk about that I've been really frustrated with is, we're three-time Trump supporter, voting for him. We both went to prison on principle. We knew the election was stolen. But we're, over a year and a half into this administration. And it's not that we don't support Trump, right? But I find that it's become very hateful, discouraging. We're supposed to stand for freedom of speech, right? And I've gotten to some of these arguments with people just because if like the conservatives at this point, if you even dare question Trump's administration, they are attacking you. You're not MAGA, you know, trust the plan. I mean, we're past that, right? I mean, for the January Sixers, we're going on 6 years of no justice. I mean, how do you settle a $5 million lawsuit for a wrongful death. And the shooter is a black man who, there's questionable fraud within this daycare that him and his wife have been running. Not only that, he got promoted and
Yeah.
paid
Oh,
off
yeah.
essentially. And we've had no arrests. We've known for what? When did Congress come out with, oh, there's 274 FBI agents? I mean, we know that it's more, right? But these FBI agents,
648.
so they committed violence.
Yeah.
And I don't know if you saw Higgins' last video with Lara Logan the other day, but he said that he has seen footage and when he is allowed to release it, he will. But he saw Capitol police officers inside the building before it was breached, and they were going into rooms and changing into Trump clothes and construction clothes. Now, mind you, they even explain, even if you've worked on Capitol Hill, right? That place is a maze. People who work there still don't even know how to get around. So imagine when you watch this footage of all of us essentially being guided through. It's like, how are we this far along and they are still withholding all of this footage?
And why? Are who are they protecting? I don't know. But one of the things we've looked at a ton of video, Jonathan and I, and when we were preparing for trial, we found this video of one of the doors that's in the south entrance, okay? And the door was wide open. This is 11 o'clock in the morning. Door's wide open. Construction workers walk through the door with buckets. They go in the building. The door stays wide open behind them. Then they go out. They leave. They push the door open. The door doesn't close automatically. So this door is just flapping in the breeze for hours, and this is the secure building. It's almost like, did they, leave
Oh, I
that
mean, we
open?
know that it was a setup, right? You can call us conspiracy theorists all you want, but truth of the matter is it was planned and there's documentation of that. My issue is for all of us and everything that we've suffered, we've had 26 people commit suicide or die of being denied their cancer medication in prison. It's funny because I read some of these comments on these podcasts that I've done explaining January 6th, telling you could go to stophate.com. You could spend more time actually investigating things. I mean, I see how involved these people are with the Karen Reed and all these different random trials across this country, but nobody will spend the time to go and watch the footage. We're telling you, if you're calling us a liar, we're telling you that the footage that the media did not show you is there for the public, and you still want to be in denial. So I find that it's extremely frustrating that people are still calling us liars and that our own government and this administration is not changing the narrative and telling people the truth.
Right. I mean, they were handing bats out of windows and you name it. They were dropping guns inside. They wanted a bloodbath that day. They really did. And they didn't get what they wanted. And I believe that the whole bomb incident was like the backup plan. If this didn't go off the way they wanted it to, that was going to be the second thing that was going to happen.
I mean, we're watching it right now with Brian,
Yeah.
what Colbert, I believe, or what's his
Yeah.
last name?
Yeah, this kid is a patsy. He didn't do it. He did not do it.
No, and it's like the second that, reporters bring up the possibility of it being a Capitol police officer, no, no, no. Then you got Officer Fanone, I mean, committing perjury, wishing harm on all of us, lying about being unconscious. We know that he wasn't unconscious. It's just really sad because we all continue to suffer. We are still blacklisted from getting jobs, depending on what state you live in, who you know, what your charges were, how big of, a public figure you were.
Right.
I know for me, I was criticized and got a longer prison sentence for doing podcasts and calling out the prosecutors and the judges. So, I was very vocal on things. up until the day I surrendered, and I even broadcasted live self-surrendering.
Yeah, you did.
Yeah, it's just we're getting tired of it. I mean, people are still being denied their VA benefits. People
Mhm.
are still being debanked, deplatformed. So for people, that say, "Oh, you got pardoned, suck it up, move on with your life," and I'll continue to say this. And any January 6th that's upset, I'm sorry, but I'm entitled to my opinion. I wasn't as excited about the pardon for the simple fact that I already did my time. The people who got excessive sentences that were in prison that had crowds of people waiting for them and helicopters and the whole welcome home thing. Yes, I am thankful that they got out of prison, right? But the pardon did not take away Google. So when you go apply for a job, people don't understand, you know, I mean, even in New Hampshire, right? Live free or die, but we're being overrun by Democrats. I have 17 years detailing experience. And I applied at a car wash with my friend who's a manager, and everything was great. They Googled my name. So, I mean, to this day, we're still being harmed, and people don't understand how humiliating it was for all those years to be red flagged at the airline and be treated like an absolute terrorist. And to find out that it was not only the largest manhunt, the most expensive, but they took, like, for example, some of our prosecutors, they came from human trafficking. So you took them off of human trafficking to go after people for misdemeanors. I remember when I was flying and they shut down an entire lane and humiliated me in front of everybody. And it's like, and then not only that, I have video footage of being followed by air marshals.
Yeah,
I mean, so that has never happened in America. And, people can say, hey, it's been, X amount of years, get over it. But, the trauma of what everybody lost is not something you can just pick up and move on. I mean, a lot of us lost our families, our friends, our careers, our children. So it's just it's hard to keep going on like this and not have it all corrected.
right. One of the things my prosecutor said at my sentencing, and I believe, they really think that they have written history with January 6th. And she got up there and she said, "When the history books are written, Miss Young will be remembered for the traitor to her morals and to this country that she is."
Well, think about it. I mean, the governor, one of the first things she did in Virginia that elected a Democrat governor, I mean, she made a bill, that they have to teach it in school as a violent insurrection. Yet to this day, people, nobody was charged with insurrection. And tell me if it was obstruction or seditious, conspiracy, or all of these things. Why have the DOJ outside of the pardons also dismissed people's cases? You know, I know that there is evidence of the election fraud, and but playing politics with everybody's life over trying to win the midterms, you know, it just it frustrates me because again, I have every right as an American who helped, we all helped on a national level mobilize to get Trump elected. Okay. And we learned the first time that he was surrounded by gatekeepers and swamp creatures, and I'm not feeling much different at this point. It's very frustrating because, we can be pissed off at Fauci. But on Trump's way out, I mean, they were promoting the vaccine.
And
So we know that it's killed millions of people. So there's a lot of frustration with things that are being, told to Trump. Obviously he's one man. I get that. Right. And when you have people that you put into power in a position that are supposed to advise you, and then we find out like all these people that were withholding serious secrets and security of this country from Trump.
still are, Kirsten.
Well,
They
I
still
know.
are.
I know.
In the DOJ, so I happen to be blessed now with a new job, which
Well, hold on, because I want to tell a quick story about that. So this poor woman has had to, be almost 70 years old working at Hannaford stocking shelves, right, to get by because she lost her business because of January 6th. So we went to America's first warehouse in New York, right? And, I was struggling with some things in my life, some opportunities that I was trying to take and struggling with things. And it was totally out of the blue. And Joe says, I have a pastor coming in for a church service. Why don't you come over and, I'll have her pray over you and maybe she has time to talk to you. So she comes over and she's speaking in tongue and very emotional towards both of us, and she had told you that your life was going to change within the next 3 months, and I know you were extremely doubtful, right? And although every other aspect of your life maybe hasn't changed for the better at this time, but you got an amazing opportunity with not only somebody who represented you for your January 6th, um, but a good friend of yours, a true fighter, for multiple January 6ers, not, just the cases that he takes in general.
He's a
So
fight.
tell everybody about this new job because before you got this new job, you were not only doing your own pro se motions left and right, and I call you the FOIA queen. Now, whether they actually answer you and give
They
you
don't answer me. They just
rightfully,
probably go, "Oh, it's her again." It's her again. She's bugging us again. But you know what? For everything I'm putting through, they have to look at it, figure out how to respond to it. So maybe I'm stopping them from going after somebody else. That's how I'm going to look at it. But anyway, I digress. For the past few years, I've been filing lots of motions for on my own behalf, on the behalf of J6ers with the plaque issue. I've been really active doing a lot of stuff. And my attorney, Jonathan Gross, has been, watching what I was doing. And then he got to the point, he worked at the DOJ for a year and saw that they were not interested at all in doing anything about weaponization, even though Trump had signed a order that they would establish a weaponization committee and they would investigate. They have done, and I say that from what I've heard from experience. So anyway, you've got people in place and everybody thinks that they're talking to these people and they're listening and they're doing something. Well, I don't think they are. And one of those people is right now being confirmed in the Senate, Todd Blanche. Let's talk about Todd Blanche. Todd Blanche worked for the Southern District of New York, one of the real tough districts as a prosecutor. He was a Democrat for many years before he represented Donald Trump. He didn't even prevail when he represented Donald Trump, but that was his big ticket into the Trump administration. And, he became the acting attorney general after Pam Bondi left. But Todd Blanche has done nothing for J6ers and is still doing nothing for J6ers. In fact, he capitulated to the Senate about the whole weaponization fund, which wasn't really a good fund anyway. The way it was established, it would have run out of money quickly, wouldn't you think? But, if he was so on board with weaponization and stopping any one of our SF-95 tort complaints can be handled with the restitution fund that they have, or the settlement fund. Stroke of a pen.
yep,
Nothing.
doesn't have to go to Congress,
No,
doesn't have to go to court.
nothing. So I'm here to tell you that a lot of the things that you think are happening are not. So I got the job with Jonathan. I just started about a week ago officially. I've been working for him here and there for about a month prior, but I'm really excited. We have a new law team that consists of, he's hired two J6ers, myself and Jared Wise. Jared Wise is an ex FBI agent that they prosecuted for January 6th.
Yeah, he also We met him when we went to the DOJ. So he was working for the DOJ too, which again, big bad January Sixers working for the DOJ, FBI agents, veterans, police officers.
Yeah. He was Todd Blanche's right-hand man, assistant to Todd Blanche. So he knows what Todd's all about as well. But anyway, Jared is now our chief investigator. I'm the clerk of all legal operations for the firm. And then we've got Jonathan, who's our attorney that does all the litigation. I think we've got a pretty cool team because we've all experienced many levels of what's going on within our judicial system.
Well, speaking of Mr. Todd Blanche, I'm going to play this clip.
Since Mr. Blanche passed out of Judiciary Committee on August the 4th, I've spoken to Mr. Blanche 5 or 6 times. We have texted many more. I just got off the phone with him. I've spoken multiple times to Senators Murkowski, Cornyn, Tillis. Senator Whitehouse shared his concerns. Additionally, I spoke with current and past administration officials, including a long conversation with former Attorney General Bill Barr. Late last night, I spoke to two. I am told that Senate confirmation is important and interactions with the President, with others in the Cabinet, and is important to DOJ employees in general. Being Senate confirmed gives him greater leverage to push for things that should be pushed for. This does not demean the Senate's role. Important issues have been discussed through this process, and Mr. Blanche has made commitments. Now on to the specific nomination. Since Mr. Blanche passed out of Judiciary Committee on August the 4th, I've spoken to Mr. Blanche 5 or 6 times. We have texted many more. I just got off the phone with him. I've spoken multiple times to Senators Murkowski, Cornyn, Tillis. Senator Whitehouse shared his concerns. Additionally, I spoke with current and past administration officials, including a long conversation with former Attorney General Bill Barr. Late last night, I spoke to 2 U.S. attorneys from Louisiana, David Corsell and Kurt Wall. Of course, there's been a lot to read and a lot to consider, and I slept on it overnight. Let's start with the concerns. Mr. Blanche showed poor judgment in approving the anti-weaponization slush fund and exempting the President from IRS audits. No American should be unfairly targeted by the law, but no American should be above the law. Mr. Blanche said these were mistakes, and he has made efforts to kill the slush fund. I am particularly concerned about episodes of apparent lawfare. DOJ bringing suits against political enemies. Both parties, presidents of both parties, have been guilty of this. It must stop. It should stop now. A never-ending cycle of prosecuting political enemies undermines the rule of law, degrades the public's trust in our institutions, and makes our politics more extreme when we need to unite to solve the big problems of our time. I'm not entirely satisfied where this is, and I have no doubt that I'll have concern in the future. I will note that I've learned that some of the cases that have been publicly reported to be under investigation by the Department of Justice have been dismissed or are no longer being pursued. I am realistic that President Trump can be unrelenting on this, but this will be true no matter who the Attorney General is, and this is the rationale for having a Senate-confirmed Attorney General with more leverage to push back. I will also note that Mr. Blanche is criticized for things over which he has no control. He points out that he has been criticized for presidential pardons given to January 6 rioters, some of whom assaulted police officers. Many of us were here then. But this is a presidential prerogative, and he is not the president. He also points out that he can advise the president, but the president is not obligated to take his advice. That is the same thing that former Attorney General Barr said in a separate conversation. And Mr. President, I can absolutely believe that President Trump at times would not take advice. But even critics admit that Mr. Blanche knows the law and is a hands-on administrator. He has instructed U.S. attorneys to focus on violent crime, human and drug trafficking, and fraud in programs like Medicare and Medicaid. Mr. Corsell, the U.S. Attorney in New Orleans, says that when he needed extra resources, Acting Attorney General Blanche provided them to finish a big drug case. Both Mr. Corsell and Mr. Wall said that DOJ has accountability measures for each prosecutor in their office, and that there are weekly calls between their offices and DOJ to review the performance of each prosecutor. That morale was high, not despite the accountability measures, but because of the accountability measures. More cases were being processed and convictions being obtained. David Corsell spoke of almost $1 billion in fraud being recovered for the U.S. taxpayer from health care fraud.
So think about it. I mean, even to this day, with pardons, Republicans or Democrats, I mean, our own Republicans are against us.
Yep.
Everybody is questioning whether, Todd Blanche is a good fit. Not only that, I mean, from what I've heard, and maybe a lawyer knows better. Maybe Jonathan knows the answer. But that letter that he signed just saying the weaponization thing is dead, from my understanding, that is not a legal document, right? So once he is confirmed, if he's confirmed, the DOJ can start any fund that they want, right? And then they can't remove him. So I guess the best thing we can hope for is that, yeah,
I hope I'm wrong. Jonathan hopes he's wrong about what he thinks about Todd Blanche. Maybe he's a good guy and he's just undercover or whatever, you know what I mean? But I hope I'm wrong about him. I really do.
well, we're tired of not knowing, you know, who's good, who's bad, what's going on. I mean, I do know that, Trump can fire him, right? Like he did with Pam Bondi. So, I
Yeah.
mean, I guess we'll see. But, I'm just not a fan of this administration playing, politics with people's freedoms and lives. And,
Absolutely.
we saw with the 250 pardons, they never happened. People are being told after the midterms. I mean, if someone deserves or earned justice, or, how do you justify letting them sit there for 4 months because you need to try and win the midterms? I mean, you endorsed Byron Donalds. Um, and actually I was asked to go door knock. And, I'm sorry, but I went to prison on principle. I'm not gonna make pennies on a dollar to go door knock and promote Byron Donalds when, I think that there's a lot of corruption behind the scenes. And unfortunately, I think that when people are endorsed by Trump, they tend to win, right? But Florida being a very red state, Florida is in trouble for this governor election. And as much as back in the day when DeSantis and Trump were fighting, right? And everyone was like, what is going on? I mean, he turned out to be a damn good governor.
Yeah. Yeah. He did.
So it's a little nerve wracking.
I will tell you there is a case that we just filed a little while ago. It's called J6ers Were Destroyed by Weaponization. And Todd Blanche's attorney has just filed his appearance on the case. They were just served and they've been served and now the attorney has filed the appearance. But here's what Todd Blanche can do. Todd Blanche has the opportunity to put his money where his mouth is and meet with several of us J6ers, hear what we have to say, and understand what we've been through. So, Todd, if you get your approval from the Senate, we're looking to meet with you.
Yeah, I mean, I think we're looking to meet with a lot of people. I mean, I've been looking to meet with the director of the BOP. When you have a deputy director like Josh Smith, who was a previous inmate, kudos to him. I don't like the fact that these staff members are refusing to work for him. They're calling him a felon. So they're basically saying that nobody can ever change their life and they're defined by the worst mistake they ever made. It's like he's spent 30 years traveling to different countries looking at how they do their prison systems. And America's is one of the worst, just so you know. So,
Our prison systems, they should be not for people like Sarah, okay? People like Sarah can come out in the community. She could have been doing good work within the community to work off whatever they think she owes them, And these people are smart people. They don't belong sitting in a prison,
no,
wasting away.
American patriots for misdemeanors and
Yeah.
Trump charges of assault when they didn't even assault a police officer. I mean, a water bottle was assault. But I think the problem that we're having is they'll let, you know, people who are still on parole, probation, using drugs, committing violence, go and speak at these prisons, but they're not acknowledging, the J6ers. Maybe they think it'll hurt them politically because we were pardoned by Trump. I don't know. But it's
And
frustrating because to find out that most of the officers that assaulted us or neglected us are still working.
right, right.
Not much has been done about it. So we would like, to sit down with Billy Marshall and explain to him what we went through.
Yeah,
And a lot of us care a lot about prison reform. I think that I've probably been one of the loudest. A lot of people said that they were going to fight when they came home. A lot of people have they've gone through enough and they decided to, how can we make a difference when it seems like nothing we're doing or saying or getting in touch with certain people is actually making a difference, So, but I mean, on a good note, I do know they're getting a new, software system. The men have never been able to do video visits. It's always been the women's.
yeah.
Now, every prison will be able to do video visits. You'll be able to email from your tablet, program from your tablet. He's worked with God Behind Bars, which is, if you haven't seen it, an amazing program. They do stuff like daddy daughter dances where the inmates get to dress up in tuxedos and have a day with their daughters.
That's
They've done it with the mothers too. So don't get me wrong. I strongly believe that Billy Marshall and Josh Smith are doing a lot, right? But Congress won't give them any more money. Nobody has money to fund the DOP out of their pocket. And there's been so much destruction over the years that it's going to take quite some time to fix it. But I do think that, the bill that was passed for the ombudsman and the oversight that was passed by both parties. There was only two no's. So why hasn't it been funded? It's like when a cop shoots somebody and then the same police department investigates. It's like, no, you need to have an outside person that is investigating that inmates or their family or even staff can report things. So I don't know. I mean, maybe soon we'll get there.
maybe. Keep praying.
So you did get sentenced to prison.
Yeah, that's a funny little story too, because remember the conversation in the car after my sentencing about where we could apply for me to go, and we were talking about Camp Cupcake in Connecticut? Well, so we proposed that at the sentencing, and my judge said, "Well, I can't have anything to do with that, but we'll take it under advisement." Well, where did they send me to? Philadelphia, which is a hole.
Yeah, I've heard it's one of the worst. But again, let's point out the fact that you have you know, this protecting angel around you because you've survived all of this and then you did get sentenced to prison because of everything being prolonged. I think God knew that, you probably would not have done well in prison. And I don't think that, an almost 7-year-old grandmother should, with no criminal history, go to a federal prison. I think it would have done more harm for you. I think, you've gone through enough that, unfortunately, some people who have been sober for so long, you stick them in a federal prison,
Yeah.
it could change your whole life.
And they wanted me to attend the drug classes in prison.
And tell the audience, how long have you been sober?
38 years at the
Seven,
time.
8 years, and they brought this up and wanted her to take a drug class. 38 years, sober, doesn't touch
And they
anything.
were testing me too on the pretrial supervision. They were doing, urinalysis tests where they watch you. And yeah, that was a lot of fun.
And for me, sometimes, I'm not trying to be, a bad influence, but I can honestly say that in some of the situations, just going out for dinner, mind you, and I'm like, hey, have a drink with me, you have no interest. So for them to bring up old wounds, which we know that they want to do anything to attack our character
Yeah.
or make things hell. So you got your sentence.
Got my sentence. Yeah, I had to call them weekly after they sentenced me. I had to not only do they not call you, you have to call them once a week, and you have to say, "Do you have a designation for me yet? Or do you have a bed at the inn yet?" And First few calls, no, no, nothing yet, nothing yet. Then I called like December. It was right before Christmas. That's when it was. And I said, I'm calling to find out if you've got a designation. Yeah, we do. You have to report to Philadelphia prison on January 28th. And I'm like, when? And she said, January 28th. And I knew that Trump had just got elected and that he had promised the pardons. And I was like, well, all righty then. And one day before I was supposed to report, my pardon was signed on the 27th. Yep. So
Yeah.
I never went to prison. And, some people don't think I'm a true J6er because I didn't do time. But you know what? I was locked in my head for years,
Yeah, which in itself is a prison sentence. I mean, no, you might not have had your door kicked in and gone to prison, but that agony of waiting and waiting and going through that trial and the public humiliation and then losing your business, conflict between you and your family. I mean, that is a loss, and all of us are a J6er. I mean, I get hate too, oh, you did 11, you only got 11 months.
No, it's like, stop it. Nobody knows the impact that each of us have walked through, and it's different for everybody. Some that took plea deals, it's stress on them. Don't judge a person until you've walked in their shoes. That's what I always say.
So, looking back at your life, right? Being a survivor of a plane crash, a survivor of January 6th, writing, out of the fog, right? What was the biggest lesson that you learned out of it?
I think just that to stand in your truth, no matter how tough it is, if it's that important, truth will prevail eventually, not in your time, but when it's time, and that's God's time.
Amen to that. So, both of your books are on Amazon, right? Because we're going to get into why you named your book Unbowed.
Because I was unbowed.
And they, and they can, everybody can find them both on Amazon, right?
Yeah, yeah. Well, the Out of the Fog, I've got to relaunch because it was, I only had 2,000 printed and it's out of print now. So I'm going to rewrite it. And actually, there's a whole piece that I'm going to add that we didn't even get to. But on the plane with me was a very interesting individual by the name of Gordon Dean, who was head of the Atomic Energy Commission. And Gordon Dean was also a very close friend of Oppenheimer, who developed the H bomb. He also was involved in the Nuremberg trials, and they were investigating all the so-called fellow travelers that they thought those were people that they suspected of being communists. Doesn't this sound like what we're going through nowadays?
Nope.
It's like,
And it is. We know that we've been fighting communism for a very long time, and I think that once everything really comes out, although I'm a little nervous that it's not, because you see these big time influencers. I don't know if you heard about that guy named Joe who found all of these ancient Bibles and all of these things. He knows how to run energy off of water.
yeah.
He was doing all of these things. He's huge on social media. He just, no. It's like everybody who comes up with all of these things we've been lied to and exposes it, they magically end up disappearing.
Yeah, well, I did what I'm talking about here with the guy that was on the plane with me. Back when I wrote the book, I didn't even comprehend or wrap my brain around it. But knowing what I know today and about the deep state, this guy, Gordon Dean, had Q level clearance. Now, I didn't even know that was a thing. I knew Q, but I didn't know that there was Q level clearance. But
And
because
quantum, you know.
yeah, yeah. So anyway, I the things that were interesting about this whole plane crash with him being on it was he had no physical injuries when they brought him in. Everybody else was destroyed, my mother included. Nothing on him. Just his papers were intact, everything. The nurse that cataloged all the victims that were coming in. One of the first things out of her mouth when she saw the Q level clearance was, call the FBI. This could be sabotage.
Yep. And I was reading some of the reports. They, did their little investigation and they say that it was the pilot's fault. But
Right.
we all know how that works.
Yeah. Yeah.
And people are tied to the Rockefellers and it makes you think, and that's 1958.
Well, it was right after the Titanic, and I had shown when I discovered all this, because this was, like, during going through the whole J6 stuff, right? And I pick up the book and I reread that section and I was like, "Oh my gosh." So I sent it to a friend and I said, "What do you think about this?" And he goes, "You were on the Titanic." You know? So, I don't know, conspiracy, whatever, but it makes me wonder what the heck was the truth about it. I'll never know.
So what do you think divides Americans the most?
I think by design. They want us fighting each other because if we're fighting each other, we won't unite. United we stand, divided we fall. It's not a left-right issue, it's not a Democrat, Republican. Two wings, same bird, that's what I always say.
Yep. I think that the propaganda in this country is
Horrendous.
absolutely insane,
Yeah, it
you
is.
know?
And the thing is, I have a good friend that he tells me, "Cindy, be of this world, not in it." And I think that's the best advice I can give to anybody with all that's going around us right now is don't get so invested in it. Just watch it play out. Don't let it ruin your life because there's nothing you can do to change what's going on. We see that, right? I mean, we fight it at all different levels and it doesn't make a difference. So trust in God, trust in your heart, your truth, and
I
keep
mean,
riding
honestly,
through it.
without giving the whole book away, give us a little detail on what your book Unbowed is about and what if somebody was to read it, the number one thing you want them to take from it.
Well, Unbowed is my story of January 6th, and it kind of picks up from where Out of the Fog left off, and takes you through the whole January 6th
Like, yeah.
trial that I went through. And I guess what I would want the readers left with is an understanding that maybe not all that they were told is the exact truth. Maybe a better understanding of what really plays out in our courtroom theaters, which was all of our trials were just theater. Our juries. My foreman on my jury worked for Hillary Clinton at the DNC. He was a paid investigator. He wrote the Trump Nightly Report. He also did positioning papers on how to beat Bernie Sanders. This guy was so biased and he led the jury to their decision. You know, we all have stories like that. You do, I do, unbowed.
Yeah, is her book.
Yep. Thank you, Kirsten.
Hmm. And let's just talk about how much of a VIP she was going to her trial on a horse.
In a dress. Classy, huh?
Now, along the way, I mean, me and you have done all sorts of crazy events. We've
Hmm.
met Rudy Giuliani.
Yep.
We've done patriot camping trips. You name it. I mean, we've God, I think
Pictures that isn't you and me together over the past few years, right?
there's a lot. There's a lot.
Yeah, but we've had some fun. We've had some fun in times that were not so fun. We've found the humor.
We definitely made the best out of a really shitty situation. That's for sure.
Never lose the humor.
So, is there anything else that you would want to tell anybody today?
No, I think that's it. And I really wish you great success, Kirsten, with your new podcast. I think you're going to do marvelous.
Yeah, I'm winging it here, but once,
Yeah.
it's kind of like how it was nerve wracking to go on other people's shows, never being a public speaker, to I'm looking at all these people, I'm like, damn, I went on your show and got over 1 million views. Like, and, I need to do my own. But,
And
it's
look
a
at you.
challenge because it is a lot different to be the host,
Yeah,
to be
but
asked
you're
questions.
doing it. You're doing it.
I'm doing it.
Yeah.
So, I love you.
I love
Thank
you
you for
too, Chris.
joining, and, people, go get her books. When I post this, I will post all of your socials and the links and anything else that you want on there, and hopefully people go follow you. I don't know if you're still doing your podcast or not,
Yeah,
but
I kind of backed off from the podcast. I'm a little busy.
yeah. Well, I love you, and, God bless America.
Bless America.